Okay, welcome everybody. Nice to have you all here, and very nice that we're doing a discussion during Fashion Revolution Week. So thank you to Cyril and to Mikael for initiating this idea. I'm not going to chat for long. I'm going to keep introductions really, really short. We have got a lot to talk about in an hour. So let me just briefly introduce ourselves. I'll introduce the panel. I'm Jackie May. I'm the founding editor of Twyg magazine, which is focused on sustainability. Annette Pringle, so I'm just going in the order that I'm seeing you, is the founder of The Fashion Agent and the managing member, and looks after more than a handful of designers on their manufacturing and distribution. Anissa Mpungwe is a designer and has been in the industry for a long time. Her amazing brand is Loincloth and Ashes, has a lot of experience in the industry. Mikael Hanan is the founder of Fields, which is a sustainable brand based in Cape Town, but fast reaching beyond our borders, works closely with manufacturers, and also has had a really, really good experience of creating a sustainable label in this current industry. And then Makale Ngwenya is a researcher from SACTU, the Southern African Clothing and Textiles Workers Union. She's a researcher, and really I think is a very important voice here because understands what's going on in the industry currently. We're not going to wait for her. Our representative from the Department of Trade and Industry and Competition is running a bit late. She will join us when she can, and her name is Dimakatso Moji. And from her, we'll hear particularly the news on the master plan, which is really, really important to all of us. So I'm just going to kick off and start immediately with a question to Makale around just establishing and telling us what has happened in the last few decades in the clothing and textile industry in South Africa. Just give us a brief recap, where we at, what our challenges are, and right now, what does it look like? Give us the whole toot.
The whole thing.
No, don't give us the good and the bad.
Okay. I hope I managed to do that. Thank you very much, Jackie, for your question. I did prepare, this because you gave us the questions beforehand. So I'm going to try to give you the whole 9 yards, the good and the bad. So basically, in terms of your question, I want to delineate between 3 phases, right? Like what's happened with the clothing industry over the last few decades, right? Since the dawn of democracy, the clothing manufacturing sector has lost about 160,000 jobs, right? And it has witnessed a massive deindustrializations as factories have closed. So in terms of the first phase, we saw the jobs bloodbath in the early 2000s, where we were losing as much as 15,000 jobs a year. And that's roughly about 10% of our industry. And in the second phase, and that's really around the 2010s, that period about, we saw the introduction of industrial policy incentives from government. And what that did basically, we saw the state starting to fund the remodernization part of the industry and help many companies to begin to invest better in machinery, process, and people. And it was very important to shift in policy, and it showed that the state can positively influence the direction of industrial change if it adopts the right tools. And it's not to say industrial policy program was not perfect in any shape or form, but it started to show the power of choosing better ingredients and recipes to turn around our industry. All right, and around the third phase, basically, just to say something important around that second phase, this industrial policy incentives began to kind of shift fortunes around a little bit, right? Like I said before, it's not that it was perfect, but it did begin to kind of change things around, where in concrete terms we saw a dramatic change in the trend of job losses, which began to decline at around 5.3, even 2% jobs per year. And importantly, in some years, we did see some overall job growth growth in the earlier parts of the 2010s for the first time in 15 years. So there was some improvement and changes that we began to see. But unfortunately, this positive change was severely determined, or rather undermined, by the collapse of institutions like SARS and the economic firestorm which began occurring from the Nenegate saga onwards, right? And that period was also characterized by low economic growth and shocks to the system, poor electricity supply, as you can imagine, what that began to do to factories. And then lastly, in the third phase, basically, this is around 2019, in the launch of the master plan. And I know you're keen to hear keen to hear some of the things that are contained in the master plan and how we can begin to link this to this conversation. We at SACTU actually started to negotiate the master plan way before 2019, right? It's a concept based on shifting the burden for the development of the industry off the lone shoulders of the state, and sharing that task with the value chain, and from the retailers to the manufacturers to labor, right? So it's a social compact including business, labor, and government. So everyone is asked to collaborate and contribute. And the master plan aims to create around 70,000 jobs, which is a really bold kind of objective it sets itself. And these jobs are expected to come through the increasing of localization of products sourced by retailers as an outcome of improving the value chain. So it also seeks to use demand-led processes to improve the industry. However, unfortunately, we've also received an absolute hammering from COVID-19, as you may be aware during this time. The lockdown, particularly the period of the hot lockdown, had a massive impact. The economic collapse associated with this, and we're not out of the woods yet. So, if you look back, we've been in this COVID pandemic for about a year, and during this time, we've lost about 10,000 jobs in the clothing manufacturing sector. And now the task is also kind of to use the master plan processes, those relationships that we've built, collaboration between the social partners and those targets that are set in the master plan process, to try and recover those jobs as quickly as possible, and then to grow those jobs again. And obviously, growing those jobs and getting back to a path of recovery is something that everybody's looking forward to, but it is really dependent on a lot of factors, including our ability as a country to generate electricity, as well as to ensure that our ingredients are we have all the ingredients in terms of policy, of the policy framework, to be able to kind of get back to a path of prosperity, so to speak.
Yeah, that I think thanks, Mikael. I think that really kind of establishes the very big, bold, as you said, use the word bold, the big job that we have to grow this industry. I mean, we don't. I often say, I mean, the idea of the growth kind of paradigm has come up with a lot of criticism in itself, but I think in South Africa we can't deny that we have to create jobs. I mean, it's like one of the most urgent things that we all have to collectively do, and the clothing and textile industry has been recognized as a really important industry to be able to do this. So thank you for that. So Dimakatso is not here to talk about the master plan, but just I think I'm sure there are people who might not be as familiar with it as you, or I mean, me to a much lesser extent, but it is just basically a plan that has been created and which has voluntarily been a kind of agreed upon by retailers and various other stakeholders to try and get local retailers to buy locally manufactured goods. So there's it's a big task. It's increasing sometimes from 24% to as much as 65% locally manufactured goods and garments. So that's quite a huge potential that is there for the clothing and textile industry, basically. So Annette, as somebody who works across the various areas of the value chain and the work that you do, I mean, where are you seeing the blockages for job creation? And we'll focus on job creation in the beginning and move on to the greening of the industry. But so just in what you do and in your time working in South Africa and working with the designers you do.
Thank you, Jackie. Yeah, thanks for having me here on the panel, and thanks to Fashion Revolution. So I'm now 17 years in South Africa. It's quite a long time. So I came here, my husband is South African, and that's what brought me here to the beautiful country. And I'm like a proudly South African permanent resident. And yeah, I'm in fashion now 30 years. So I used to be brand manager for Hugo Boss for the women's wear department. And I mean, a lot has changed there also in the last 17 years. And just coming here to the country, I could see that from like a brand perspective, and if we then go even further into luxury, there were not the structures set for local designers, you know, like in terms of making it happen and making businesses out of it. And the good thing about fashion is that the value chain is so big, you know, like a lot of people with different skills have a chance to work in fashion and to earn a living. And if you'd like me to touch first on the blockages, I think the challenge which comes with fashion is it's seasonal, you know, so the blockage is certainly to commit to like a fixed labor force, you know, like in any part of the value chain, because like the nature and the business of fashion is just so seasonal, you know, like you need lots of hands when you're in production, you need not so many hands when you're just sampling, like from a designer perspective, you know. And the same even on like on a material scale, you know, if we go to yarn or to the weavers, like if they get their productions in, then they need a lot of people, and if that's not the case, less. So I think that's certainly the biggest blockage. And it would be nice to talk to Makale about it, because I'm now involved or linked up with like a MVP with like a project in India where they like trying to kick off sort of a LinkedIn platform for garment and factory workers, you know, and that can be then expanded to anybody working in the value chain of fashion, also stylists, photographers, you know, like very user-friendly platforms, so that self-taught people can also access this platform and not having like that whole LinkedIn process or any other, you know, more sophisticated platform. So to make it simple and to say, I'm here, I have these skills, and then like other people could like link in and then basically say, okay, great, I'm interested in your skills. And that would also help, you know, like just with the fluctuation in garment workers, that they could like access or be more independent, you know, not having to go from factory to factory. And I actually got to this project, and we're going to touch also on the further down questions, like in the second slot, I got to it through the Ethical Fashion Initiative. And that is the co-secretariat of the United Nations Alliance for Sustainable Fashion. And they initiated that program, and the Fashion Agent is also part of a program. So 3 programs have been selected through a hackathon, which happened last year during COVID. And yeah, it's quite an achievement, you know, and very happy to be part of it. So, but I think in terms of, you know, what you asked now with the blockages, I think that could be like a solve. So that's one thing, to have a more transparent market. And obviously the challenges are, if you have a good worker, you don't want to let it go, or you don't want to expose it to others, you know, easily. So we need to find new rules and solutions and how we can work together. And then the other thing I think is very important, a lot of collaborations are happening. You know, a lot of global brands are reaching out to South Africa and to the African continent, to creatives, and especially fashion designers. And my view is that those global corporates really have a responsibility of knowledge transfer, you know, like to, if they're not in fashion, you know, like then those collaborations need to be manufactured here on the continent, or to start off with in South Africa. But then at least on the continent, if we can't do it, you know, so that there is like a direct benefit, not only in design, you know, not only for the designer or the creative or the photographer running with that collaboration, but like how can we incorporate more people, you know, like a larger community, so that the ripple effect is just bigger than like maybe one designer and maybe a CSR project, you know, he or she has chosen, and to support that. And don't get me wrong, those projects are important. my impression now after 17 years is this: Africa can actually look after itself. And I mean, that's possibly a very general statement, but I'm just dealing with so many young people, not only in South Africa, also starting now across the continent. And a lot of you and a lot of the listeners are entrepreneurs, because that's just how it works, especially in the creative industry. So, and if we can make sure that there's more knowledge transfer, and Makale, you were speaking about the ingredients, so for me, it's also to have the right knowledge, the right skills. And we have so many creative people, like tons, and people tap into those stories. So I feel those people who tap into the stories need to share then their knowledge, So let's say if we could kick off a huge fashion collaboration, they could do like a sneaker training school here, and then like the sneaker brands we have already here in South Africa and also on the continent, if they could really then use such high technology facilities, like in like vegan sneakers. I have friends, they make now vegan sneakers in Paris, so but if we can get those corporates looking and making collaborations with our African creatives, invest in technology, joint ventures, and that can also be material, and that's not my forte, like Anissa will speak about it and Mikael, but I think if we can get the best of the industry, like wherever they are on the value chain, and partner with locals here, instead of thinking, oh, now government has to do it, or and we have to establish it, and we don't have the knowledge. There is slowly we're building up luxury production, or when I mean luxury, I mean where we need a lot of hands and a lot of skills, because so much craft is still on the continent, which people are keen to share and to buy, and how can we make it that it's luxury craft and not regarded as like it's a desirable object, So I think that there is a lot of potential to create jobs and also to manufacture. Bottom line for me is knowledge transfer and education with the skills we would need for the industry, because the designs are sorted. Jackie, we can't hear you. You're on mute.
Thanks for that, Annette. I'm also just thinking, we'll get to one of the challenges around that market. I think there's a big issue, and Mikael knows this, and so does Anissa. But let's just go, Mikael, your work, just working with people in the industry in terms of creating your brand. Can you just talk a little bit about the skills that you find, and have you had to do lots of upskilling? Just your experience around the manufacturing industry in this sector. Can you just talk?
Sure.
Talk to us about your experience with that.
Sure. Thanks, Jackie. Thanks, Cyril, for this invite, and also the Fashion Revolution, and to you, Jackie. I think for us, it feels it's very much been a journey of our brand and also our manufacturing partners. At first, we thought, through a friend, I was introduced to one manufacturing house, and I thought that this would be like the one-hit wonder, and they could do everything. And I think perhaps historically with South Africa, because most of the manufacturers have focused on mass, and that's been where the market is. Because, if I'm asking a manufacturer, just, maybe it's 50, 100, like for them, they laugh at that. They need the big mass. So this historically where South Africa has been as lowest cost, pump it out, get it out, and sell it at the low price. So when we come as a contemporary or a designer or a luxury brand, you have to work with them. And it's been a journey. And actually, I'm not a golfer, but like, I thought of this analogy this morning. We've ended up with fields. We have like this golf club set, and essentially we've got a different manufacturer for each different process. I think at our level, that's been our journey. We can't just have one manufacturer that can do our knitwear, our trousers, our tees, our jackets, because we've learned that manufacturers, where you can get that attention, where you can get that consistency is with the machinery. So now, like in this journey of 2 years, we've have a different manufacturer for each different component, and that's been great. And then when we found that shirt specialist or that jacket specialist, now we can talk with them on the detail. And it's a bit of a balance. Our trouser man, when we say to him, hi, can we have 100? He laughs at us and he says his minimums are 800, and we have to beg and plead and explain the brand, and we meet at like 200. Okay, like, we'll deal with that, and we can handle that because, our items aren't fast fashion and they can last a number of years. But but then we can work with the factory on the quality and the consistency and improving the rating and getting the manufacturing right. But it's very much a collaboration, and not something that we can do without them. So yeah, I think often with sometimes initially we thought, as I said, we could find one person to do it all, or one small set, or one small seamstress business. Maybe there's a person with 3 or 4 machinists. And that's great for small runs if you're doing, for example, a t-shirt. But as soon as you want to do something slightly more complicated and you want that consistency, finding that you need the machines as the component as well. And that's been kind of this challenge that we find, always looking for the right manufacturer and someone to work with us on that.
Okay, that's really interesting. Have you seen any growth in the organizations that you are working with? Or is your...
not because of us. Maybe the one guy because of us, but generally it's because I think COVID, we saw a change because of the bigger boys like Mr. Price, Truist, TFG et al. They brought more onshore because of shipping costs increasing because of fewer flights and like kind of, the kind of the more like macro stuff. So yeah, then we've had to almost like fight for our production slot. And yeah.
Actually, I think there's something very interesting what you said, and I've been thinking about it quite a lot this week, is we want to grow the industry, but we also don't want to get caught into growing a fast fashion industry. So, talking about small production runs, I mean, actually that's really, really important because, the 800, you're not going to sell 800. I mean, I just think there's something that's something we really have to keep in mind. We don't want to get trapped into a fast fashion industry, but Makale, we'll talk about that just now. So Anissa, you mostly produce in-house, and you do also have that interface with big manufacturers occasionally. Why do you choose to work like that? To prefer to keep it the way you do? I mean, I know, whether it was something that happened or a change or...
Hello, everyone. I look like I'm a bit stuck. Can you all hear me or see me?
We can hear you, Anissa. There you go, unstuck.
Okay. Okay. Thank you so much for having me. I think for me, it was just a default setting, doing everything in-house because that's how I started with Loincloth and Ashes. So it's kind of a comfort space for me. And of course, with this, the pros of that is getting the quality that we want out there to the consumer. And also to kind of refine the brand culture messaging as through how we finish our items and so on. But and that's when there's a small run, and because I'm primarily online and in a few stores within South Africa, we can easily manage that. However, if we do obviously get a bigger order that maybe we can't handle because of time constraints, or it's a bit overwhelming, yes, we do go to CMTs. But like it was mentioned, kind of getting one CMT to do everything can be a challenge, especially with quality. So for me, kind of where I sit comfortably is really in-house, just so that I can understand many things about the whole process. Why do we have excess fabric? Why do we have, in terms of quality, why does something sell? Is it because of the finishing? Is it because of the style, etc.? Yeah, that's for now, that's kind of where I sit. And with us, we're a very small team, and we work very hard. But yeah, when it gets a bit much, we do use CMTs within Gauteng. We don't even go further out.
And Anissa, with your pledge to always, fair wages and ethical labor practices, how do you ensure that is happening when you outsource?
So I have an agreement that a small agreement that I've put together, that I've put online to say, you know, we have, I call it the supplier requirement agreement. And basically, I'm just going to name a few things that I've put on the website that I have an agreement with the CMTs. Things like compliance to local labor laws, banning discrimination, health and safety within the workplace. Those are the kind of things I need to make sure are happening so that the product that we are selling is clean, so to speak. And at least to leave a good footprint, even if we are a small company, to leave a good footprint as we go along. And I think because we are a small business, that is it's easier to achieve that. I think once you become a bit bigger, controlling all of that can be quite challenging, I'm sure.
That's why we have SACTU on board. They need to control so that, I just want to segue with you, Anissa, into textiles. You know, I deal with smaller independent designers, and always we come up with an issue of you know, textiles that are available to them, preferred sustainable textiles. It's really expensive to get your hands on that, and also understanding how that you know, where they come from, if they are buying from a supplier, understanding where those fabrics come from. And at the moment, Fashion Revolution is running this whole drive, you know, what's in your fabric, who made your fabric, because it's really, really important. I mean, we know and understand maybe what, you know, who made the clothes, but to dig a little bit deeper is another very important part of the kind of ethical and sustainable fashion practice. So will you just explain a little bit about your challenges around that?
Yeah, I think with fabric, it's always, it will always be a challenge, as it was mentioned again earlier, that many factories have closed even before I started my business. So sustainability, or at least having a green product, is good, but to get that always is very challenging. I mean, if you go and get fabric from the local suppliers in Johannesburg, 9 times out of 10, those fabrics have come from somewhere else. I import some items also from East Africa, and even those items I can see they're not from East Africa, even though they're African inspired. And so I find within my peers, what we're doing now is we are starting to print our own work or our own artwork in fabrics, so that we can kind of have ownership on the identity of a brand. But that too can be a bit expensive. So, you know, being green or being sustainable, it is there, but it can only go so far, because also purchasing power can kind of change how your product will perform, and how, you know, it would affect that. Yeah, so fabrics, I think for me is something that can be achieved, but I think price points then becomes something you really have to tweak with the consumer to see what they can and cannot afford.
And I think that's where Mikael has done. I mean, his business model is very much allowing for the preferred fibers that are available in Southern Africa. So Mikael, I think it's really interesting what you've done. Can you just explain, I mean, your fibers and textiles are all, if I'm correct, are all sourced in Southern Africa. And you really try and focus on natural fibers. So just tell us about that process, because it's actually, it's not an easy process. And I know, and I understand that because, you know, we talk to a lot of designers.
Yeah, so I think that was a commitment from the beginning with Fields, is the sense of we wanting to showcase quality, with making garments in Southern Africa and also sourcing in Southern Africa. So that framework is limiting in a certain sense, but it kind of gives us that challenge. It means that we don't have endless factories to look for, but when we find a factory, it means that we are actually going quite deep with that factory to work on things. So when we encounter issues, sometimes I guess, when you have like a disagreement with a supplier or manufacturer, you might just drop them and move on to the next one. We've really had to work through it and to rework the fabric and to make it better. So some of the challenges is the price point. I mean, our fabric that we pay per meter is not cheap. But then I think that we're able to get a better quality because we can work with that factory and we're much closer to them. Anissa, I really love what you were saying about the supplier agreement, and I'm actually just going to borrow your idea and use it with our suppliers, and I think that that's so good. But then I think another thing that we're trying to do is, so we know the supplier, whether it's the weaver or the CMT, but Jackie, to your point about where did that cotton come from? So we're building up this ourselves internally, and so let's trace that even further. Which farm is it? I think with like Mohair Cluster or Mohair South Africa, they're quite good at that, because we can go to those farms in the Eastern Cape, see the farmers, have a discussion, look at the shearing, and we can see end to end. But I think on the cotton side, we don't do that yet, or we haven't done that enough yet, Fields, and something that I want to unpack. So I think for us, because it is Southern Africa, it's much closer, and we can, and this means that our journey is more tangible. We can find the farms, we want to find the processing, and then every part from farming to dyeing to weaving or knitting. I want us to be able to say over this journey in the next couple of years that we've seen and documented every process, coupled with some of those supply agreements, which was great, like that Anissa suggested.
Yeah, I think that's great. And I think the cotton, I mean, the question that was going to be posed for Dimakatso next was about just finding out where South Africa is in terms of developing the textile industry and growing it. And I'm very, very passionate about organic cotton. I don't think we should be tolerating GMO. And I also think there is a huge potential in hemp. But I don't know, Makale, maybe you can just fill in there and just tell us what you know about the textile industry in terms of the mills and what's happening around cotton and hemp. Very briefly. I mean, I don't want to put you on the spot if you don't have the answer to that, but it would just be interesting to hear if you do know.
Yeah, I think I don't know a lot about what's going on there, but I suffice to say that there are many kind of initiatives through the master plan process to support the entire value chain, right, and to ensure that we've got enough skills and everything that the value chain requires. So this master plan, has task teams, and it's not just a document that was left and signed about a year or two ago. It's really alive. Like there are regular meetings, and there's a lot of work that is being done through the DTI to support the sector, to support the industry. So conversations are being had where where assistance is required. And I think the master plan itself is like a very powerful tool. And I wish Dimakatso was here to just, speak to, what's really happening there, because, this conversation is a bit light without those elements, basically, that she would have been able to tell us what's going on there. But yeah, that's all I can say about what's happening there. And I'll leave it there. Thanks.
That's good. I mean, I know that I know that there's a lot of work going on, and I think it's amazing. I think it just, I mean, to Annette's point, where I think maybe there's a feeling of maybe not feeling networked enough, because I know that there are lots of initiatives and people creating networks, but somehow there's not an ecosystem that's a connected ecosystem. But I think it'll get there. Anyway, just Mikael, to stay with you, just to move on to environmental concerns.
Yeah.
We need to, it would be interesting, what are your concerns around the greening of the industry? How do our factories look in terms of carbon emissions and their carbon footprints and pollution, and how are we doing at ensuring that we fix that and improve systems?
Thanks for that question, Jackie. And I think it's really important to kind of say what we are concerned about as, a trade union. And obviously, we are very concerned about the environmental impact of the clothing industry. It is a substantial contributor to emissions, those chemicals, pollutions, and pre and post consumer waste. Is a substantial user of crucial life-sustaining resources like water. Bearing in mind that South Africa is a water-scarce country, so we are very concerned about it. And production processes can also pose harm to workers and their communities. So we see issues of sustainability as ultimately linked to issues of safe working conditions for workers, decent work and wages, and of course, ethically produced local products like, Anissa was alluding to earlier. So SACTU is keen for a just transition in the industry where we move production into a more sustainable form, where for instance, we mitigate the largest effects on workers from the changes in production, and where we create significantly more equitable and inclusive society in the process, right? But there are challenges with the shift to a greener industry at this point. For example, on the side of the factories, right, due to challenges being experienced in many textile factories where it appears, to be there's little finance, basically. There's very limited room financially for them to seek new loans for major capital investments due to many factories being in distress. And there appears to be limited but increasing knowledge among many industrialists about world-class technologies in the sustainable production space. And on the other side, in terms of the financiers, it's practically very hard, very, very difficult, for factories to shift to greener production technologies. And partly this is because of the squeeze on the state resources, right? And partly because private bankers are wary of loaning money to a sector which has been in such distress. So very little money to go around to be able to make, those much needed investments there. And from the demand side of the question, there do not appear to be significant incentives on the demand side to encourage factories to adopt such technologies. Safe to say, people like Anissa taking it upon themselves to have these agreements with people that they work with to ensure that, they produce as ethically as possible. But those things are not as ubiquitous, for example, where retailers of products, we don't say these products must meet XYZ sustainable standards. We don't make those demands, upfront or as much as we should. And that in turn is, partly due to consumers not demanding these standards from the retailers. And again, SACTU and the DTI, they've been exploring ways to find more funding and to bring more expertise and knowledge, both locally and internationally, to this matter, and to be able to begin this process. But it's a matter that we think can be driven under the new master plan as a cross-cutting outcome, right? And the master plan does, make in one of the objectives does point to the issue of sustainability, particularly in respect of the environment. But to be clear, any solution SACTU wants to find are the ones that put workers and their well-being, decency, and income stability at the center, alongside the imperative to green the industry. So that, of course, will be tough because, the consumption model is essentially wasteful and creates jobs on the basis of volumes, whereas the reality of sustainability is that such consumption and volumes are not sustainable, which puts jobs at risk. And, our task is to find a way to satisfy both imperatives to the maximum so that we can care for our planet, but also ensure that people are left better off. Thank you.
Therein lies our quandary, tricky one. Annette, I'm very interested. I think, so that's fantastic, Mikael, and it's interesting. It's really great to know that everybody's really thinking about this. And obviously, I mean, the issue around investment and CapEx support there is very important. But I think, Annette, you really, your experience around the ethical and sustainable fashion is really from the ground up. I mean, and I think, the SMMEs is such an important part of this process in building the industry and in inspiring the industry and inspiring the bigger part of it. What's your experience around ethical and sustainable business practice? Not business practices, design practices and designer practices.
So Jackie, what Fashion Agent is tackling and standing for from the start is like a pre-order model, you know? So, I mean, we started off in January 2012 and pre-order like targeted to B2B, so like to a wholesale market in South Africa and also overseas. So overseas market really opened up through TB Magugu winning the LVMH prize in 2019. And also like now all eyes are on African fashion, you know? So it's like a good, how do you say, like we need to elevate that, you know, and use that momentum to really get benefits for the industry to grow. So what the idea was now during COVID-19, because obviously like some retailers canceled orders, you know, also for small designers because of business being closed. And we lost some orders, even we do pre-order and we ask for deposits so that manufacturing can take place. Like what you see behind me are the remains of that collection. Of people not having like fulfilled their balance payments. So the idea now, what we're driving very strongly is to access the B2C market, you know, because yeah, everybody like says, yeah, we need sustainable fashion and we need to change. And that means also changing the consumer behavior, you know, so then we cannot say, okay, but I like this and I want it delivered tomorrow, you know, so, and that will be like a long process to change, but that's basically what Fashion Agent has now put as yeah, like a very important topic. So we're offering fairly soon in May, we're hoping to launch pre-order for B2C market. We did like a small MVP here in South Africa, like just very basic on like an online platform, you know, to see what the responses were with a few designers like Muso Maxwell.
Sorry, why don't you explain B2C, B2B, and B2B?
Okay, B2B is business to business. So our business does business with another business and like mainly with like any kind of retailer, be it online retailer or brick and mortar retailer. So a concept store, department store, so that's B2B. B2C is business, our business doing business with a consumer. So like everybody here in the audience and all of us when we go and we shop, you know, as individuals. So the whole model is now to offer pre-order for the consumer, that we can say, okay, I like a garment that the designer is only like making the sample range, like designers do I work with. And then like the consumer can also place a pre-order committing that, yeah, they will get it in 12 weeks time, you know, and also committing to pay deposits and balance payments. And like one of the reasons is also to adhere to the United Nations sustainability goals, you know, set. So we're tackling very much 8, 10, and 12. And you can like look that up. If you Google United Nations sustainability goals, it will come up. So like very simple explained, like number 8 is decent work and economic growth. Number 10 is reduced inequalities. And number 12 is responsible consumption and production. And those are the 3 goals we can like tackle with such a pre-order model yeah. And then everybody who is buying in such a pre-order model is like enhancing those sustainability goals. And it will help, you know, like not to overconsume, and we have less waste. So we're literally making what has been ordered. And I think that's something which needs time, you know, it's not going to be easy. It will need time, but I think it's the only way forward. And I mean, if I go very much back, that's how it used to be, you know, like you would see something, you would order it, and then you would get it. I mean, that whole fast fashion came basically in the last 20 years. And I'm certainly not the expert on that.
Annette, I think something as well that's been coming up a lot is the take-back schemes. So what do your consumers do once they're finished with those clothes? I think more and more designers and retailers need to think about the take-back scheme so that the clothes don't end somewhere where they shouldn't be. But I just want to, I think we're getting into a very interesting part of the discussion. We do have, I don't want to go on for too much longer, but I just want to hear very much from Anissa and Mikael about their experience with the market, because I think that, you know, we can make clothes and we can do all this beautiful stuff, but if people aren't buying South African fashion, you know, we need to have people wanting our clothes. Anissa, what is your experience with your market? And also I know that you mentioned the price point. Talk about that, because I think this is all very important. As I said earlier, we don't want to get into the fast fashion model at all, which is great having the three of you here, because it's exactly not what you're doing. Yeah, so let's just, sorry, Anissa, over to you.
Yeah, so I think, I mean, for me, when I start in the beginning, I think about three things and the differences for it that would obviously affect how a product would be received from the consumer. And I've divided up to obviously ethical, sustainable, and slow fashion. And for me, ethically, I need to answer, you know, am I doing, obviously it means concerns for the human rights. Am I doing the right thing for the people? And are they being taken care of, not just by, you know, their salaries, etc., but, you know, are they getting further knowledge in what they do within their workspace? The second is sustainability, and that is obviously concerns about the environment and what is my footprint, my carbon footprint there. And as I mentioned before, as a small scale designer or as SMME, it's easier for me now, but as soon as I grow a bit bigger, I mean, that will be something I have to revisit. And the last thing is slow fashion. And for me, that means concerns about the product itself. And with this, it's all about the consumer and how the information they give me while they're purchasing from either online or in the store space. South Africans, in my experience, are very loyal clients. As long as there's consistency, there is trust, there's newness, there's relevance. And this kind of concept of what you see is what you get becomes very important, so that the deciding factor of whether they're going to buy that product or not, that decision can be made in that way. And I find also customer service is important, even to the point in how you say hello to a person, can really kind of change how, whether you're going to have somebody purchasing something or not. Yeah, within South Africa though, before I'm dealing with e-commerce at the moment, and before e-commerce, South Africa was already price sensitive. And this is obviously because of our social, economical, political landscape. And I think many countries that, you know, most countries go through this. And because of that, it influences purchasing power. But even having said that, clothing and apparel still sits on the top with the e-commerce from what I see within maybe Central Africa down, in the e-commerce product category, which means at least the space for growth is there, and it's very exciting. And yeah, so yeah, as soon if your price is right, if you're consistent, you definitely will have customers coming back. But also, I also find it was funny last year. I changed from having customers that would buy something within a LCA, loincloth and ashes bracket, to, for example, selling masks, which was in a very different category. And I kind of found that I was speaking to two kinds of customers, and how I even did my price points was interesting in how they received, you know, that information. Yeah, yeah. When it comes to pricing, you really have to get it right.
Well, I mean, it's so interesting about heard from so many people who are, you know, that there's been a great success with some e-commerce sites, which is very interesting and very exciting. Mikael, how does your experience, sorry, just before, I just want to quickly welcome Dimakatso Moji, who works for the Department of Trade and Industry and Competition. Hello, welcome. We're going to come back to you in a minute. I just want to just get Mikael to carry on with this discussion around the market. I think you know, that's partly what Twyg does, is to try and grow a market and connect the local market to our amazing producers of incredible sustainable clothes and other products. Yeah, Mikael, over to you. Just what's your experience?
Yeah, sure, Jackie. I think that, you know, that what you highlighted there is around awareness. I think with us with Fields, there's two challenges. The one is around awareness. So as a new brand, you go into market. So how do you create awareness in South Africa without, you know, a huge budget? So whether it starts with social media, whether it is backed up by the website and it's backed up by a store, all those components build and create awareness to have that interaction with customers, to tell the story of the brand, to kind of allow the customers to buy into it. And then hopefully the customers will trust you and actually spend their money with you, as opposed to perhaps another brand that they've seen their friends wear or they've always worn, that they go and buy in one of the malls or on one of their overseas trips. So what Anissa was saying around customer engagement, I very much agree with that. You know, like we found that if we're able to build up a good relationship with someone in store, they might come once and they'll come back and try something, and then you can build up that trust, and then that repeat customer comes. So for us, you know, getting into that local market, right now it's about creating more awareness. We believe in our product. We see that customers who stumble upon our product, for example, some overseas customers, they see it, they like it, they try it on, they appreciate it because they see more contemporary menswear in Europe. They then come and complete the purchase and buy. South Africans perhaps haven't seen too much, or there aren't that many contemporary menswear brands yet, so we're a little bit different, and then that takes a little bit longer for someone or local customer for us to become a bit more familiar and then to build up that trust.
I think what your approach is kind of a slow approach. And Anissa, I think you mentioned slow fashion, this idea of a slow approach to building that confidence. I think the access to international brands in a way has created quite a hype. I mean, I wanted to just shed, I mean, I think I did shed tears seeing the queues outside, you know, the big international brands looking, you know, people spending their Christmas money there and thinking, you know, we've got these amazing local brands we need to support. And I mean, I don't want to be too sort of anti everybody else and only pro, you know, our brands, but I think that there are people who've got spending power, and hopefully more and more of that spending power goes towards these amazing brands that we are building and creating in South Africa. Dimakatso, hello, welcome. I hope your afternoon wasn't too hectic, and I'm very pleased you've made the time to join us. I know Mikael has to go soon at 5 o'clock for a meeting. I think we're just going to loop back a little bit because we have spoken around the issue of the master plan. But do you mind just, we kind of understand what it does. We spoke a lot about how much energy is going into the master plan. Can you just give us a brief breakdown of where we at? I mean, how much progress have we made with the objectives of the master plan in the last couple of, when it was signed at the end of 2019. So it's what, almost 18 months later. What progress has been made in that time? And yeah, if you can give us a bit of, and welcome again.
Thank you, Jackie. Good afternoon, everybody. My apologies for coming late to this meeting. I respect time and I respect people's time, and I am not by any chance acting like I am important. I am not important at all. I'm a servant to my country and I'm a servant to the people. Jackie, the question that you asked about the master plan, yes, it was signed around November 2019. And obviously it's a document that is combining labor, industry, as well as government to ensure that the objectives and opportunities or challenges that are experienced or that are found in the industry are actually they are actually captured in such a way that we are going to be able to overcome them. The progress that has been made from 2019 thus far, I do know that it's having so much momentum. One of the things that the master plan has done, you would know that we had in the past a lot of illegal imports coming into the country. One of the tasks of the master plan is to stem the flow of illegal imports. We have this called Interagency Working Group on illicit trade or illicit economy. It is an interagency working group whereby SARS, ITEC, CIPC, NCC, we sit in that group and we look at the challenges that are facing the sector with regards to illegal imports. And what I can tell you about the progress of that committee is that to date, the committee has the issue about the reference price is being addressed. The issue about the valuation database is being addressed. And there is more cooperation between industry and SARS in terms of declaration of good, because there was a lot of misdeclaration and undervaluation. So those kind of things are being taken care of. I am part of that interagency working group, and there's a whole lot of movement there, despite the fact that we were on lockdown. And I can tell you that even during lockdown, we saw illegal imports coming in, and it was easier I'm not going to say it was easier, but it was better that there was not a lot of imports coming in, so that the South African manufacturer can ramp up their manufacturing to step up and supply the demand that was made available. And yeah, from there, we're still working, and I can also confirm that the master plan is being monitored on, I think, on a monthly basis through what we call the Executive Oversight Committee that is chaired by the minister and the CEOs of different companies. So they monitor progress on each and every commitment, or on each and every task team that is supposed to deliver on the commitment. There is a task team that is tasked with the rebate. I know that there has been a rebate that has been signed, and it's supposed to be implemented recently. It has been signed through. I'm trying to check my notes here because I came late. I was having a busy day. I know that there has been a rebate that has been granted. It's just that I will check all the details about the rebates and come back to you as to when it was signed and what are the benefits that someone who's looking into importing a fabric and all those things can benefit from that. And another one that has moved is on Buy Local, the Buy Local campaign. I'm sure if you have seen, the president once spoke about it, that there was going to be a massive Buy Local campaign during December. And in December, we actually had over social media platforms, we had the Proudly South African all the time broadcasting and encouraging people to buy local. And just when I got onto this platform, I heard you talking about your heart broke when you saw people lining up for brands. I am a self-made South African brand ambassador. I wear even the shoes that I buy South African made shoes, because we've got such good brands in South Africa. Clothes, on my Facebook page, there is a flag there that says South Africa, and I buy South African clothes. The reason why I say I'm not against any other brand, but I always tell people that if you go and buy these big expensive brands, I mean, sometimes we won't even remember the name of the person that, the name of that a person who did your blouse or your shirt, but we will remember, because South Africans are colorful people by nature. Your top that you are wearing, we will remember that Jackie was wearing a colorful South African with, and we will describe it and say Jackie was wearing a colorful blouse with South African colors, because I can spot yellow, blue, white, green, and everything in there. So that campaign went through. It's still going through. We did it in December. It's part of the master plan as well. We did it in December, encouraging people to buy their Christmas gifts and everything at a local retailer or at a local manufacturer or whatever. Yes, somebody said, oh, you are saying you are wearing Cindy Sokumalo. Perfect, excellent. So we did that. And then in January, we did our back to school campaign, encouraging everyone to buy locally made school shoes, because we have good leather in South Africa, and we make beautiful leather school shoes that can last, leather belts, backpacks. We were encouraging everybody to buy that. And then the other one that is still in motion with regards to the master plan is the funding, I don't know whether to call it the funding or the assistance that we need to assist the industry with. That is currently in progress. We are reviewing the current funding scheme that we have with the IDC. Thank you for wearing Clive Randall. I do have I do have some of these thing as well. So there's actually quite a lot. It has moved a lot, and we also had export promotion workshop. What I can tell you about the export promotion workshop, we were whetting the appetites of the manufacturers regarding the oncoming Africa Free Trade Continental Agreement. The Africa Free Trade Continental Agreement, I mean, we cannot go out there if we do not have anything. We need to go out there, organize, and know that when we go into Africa, Africa has got its own challenges, but as South Africans, we always waver and we always come out of the challenges. So it has moved a lot in answering your question. And I believe that the master plan is actually, because it's a document that is signed by both government and labor and industry, it's a document that is looking good because everybody's got their hand in the cookie jar. So nobody wants to fail. That's how I'm looking at it. Nobody wants to fail. So yeah, I can say that it has moved. Besides all the challenges that we've had with COVID, it has moved, it's still moving. And yeah, there's a lot of work, and I want to encourage everyone that now is not the time to point fingers at each other. I mean, the economy is bleeding. We have to work together. Somehow we have to work together. We can't point, although we have our own challenges as government, there are a lot of challenges. Industry also has their own challenges. Labor also has their own challenges. Consumers also have their own challenges. But if we put aside our challenges and say, the economy is bleeding, how do we create jobs? How do we make sure that our brands are selling? Because that's the most important thing. If your brand is not selling, then you're not gonna create a job. As government, I'm still gonna give out the 350s that I do not have, that you're supposed to make sure that when you sell your brand, I get the tax money. So that's all I can say about the master plan. But like I said, because my day was a bit hectic, all the other questions, I can quickly write them down and then send the responses to you. Thank you.
Or we'll do a separate webinar with you, Dimakatso. But I think what's interesting as well, just, I mean, you spoke a lot, there's a lot, as you said, there's a lot of doing and working together is really important. We've all raised that issue of putting, you know, all our minds together and our hands together. And I love this whole buying local, supporting local. You know, there is obviously the issue, you know, there are other jobs around the world that are also as important, but I think we have particular crisis around job creation in South Africa. So I think we're allowed to do this. But I just want to, Dimakatso, the other thing we spoke a bit about was the greening of the industry. I mean, I've just finished studying a course in biodiversity, so I'm feeling very obsessed by organic cottons and hemps. And the more I read about it, the more important. I mean, this fire we've just had in Cape Town really points to, you know, we need to really look after our and how related that is. We need to look after nature because we are so connected and dependent on it. So I don't think we've got time to go there now because I think we should answer some questions, but I did want to also ask you about the plans for hemp, but I know that might not be ready to talk about that. But I know that hemp, organic cotton, we've got fantastic natural animal fibers, which I am very passionate about as well. And I think Annette is too, with the mohair collection that you're involved with. So, you know, kudos to everybody in South Africa for doing the most amazing work. And yeah, and let's all build it. I mean, look, I mean, I just love this. I've had this for years.
Oh, I love it.
But Nikki, I just want to ask Nikki, who's in the background from Fashion Revolution. I don't know if there are any questions that it's quite a long, lots of conversation going. Is there anything we need to speak about now?
There were a couple of questions. So one's from Anita Stanbury, and she asked whether fashion analytics and POS data is important to ensure your brand functions optimally.
Anybody want to answer that? I think data is always very important. I mean, I think Anissa, you mentioned that in terms of understanding what sells. I mean, if you, I mean, I don't know if anybody's on Facebook, but the more data, the better. And you too.
Yeah.
Sorry, Jackie, I don't have an option to raise my hand here.
Okay.
Yeah, so one of the things that I can answer about that, I think you're speaking about data, especially in the export promotion workshop that we just had. Our department is working very hard to get data, and the data that we have in our possession is data like who owns whom, where you can find more information about what are the trends, what is happening, what are the numbers in terms of exports, what is it that the consumers are consuming. That is something that government somehow also provides for it through Statistics SA. We also have a unit in the DTIC. Sometimes, Jackie, even though people are so disappointed with government, there's a lot that government is doing that people don't know about, and that people, because they have such a bad taste from government, they don't know that these opportunities do exist, and it is your right to come to government and ask. Statistics SA has got beautiful data on whatever it is that you want to know. We also have the unit in the DTIC that is doing research that can give us the data, and we also have some universities that we're working with that have the data in whatever it is that you might want to know about trends, about consumer tastes and preferences and all those things. There's a wealth of information. just encourages.
Is it open source information? Do you have it available on the? Is it available on the website, or is there?
Well, I know that with Stats SA it is available, but the one for export promotion that I'm talking about, we are still trying to get the DTIC to have it available on the DTIC website so that people can have access to it. So with that one as well, I will take note, and I will make sure that I come back to you with the response of when will it be available if not available currently. Yeah.
Anissa, do you want to add? Yeah.
Yes, I think one of the things that I really appreciate about being online is having that data firsthand versus when I had a walk-in store. It's good at the back end of your website to kind of see who is looking at your product, from where they're coming from, how long they're spending their time within your website, and specifically what they're looking at. And that kind of data for any business is obviously important. So yes, to answer, I think it was Anita's question, definitely the analytics are important, all the way down to abandoned carts. You will never know why someone has abandoned that cart, but if you have a message that says to you, the cart was abandoned, and you can send an email back to say, oh, listen, you forgot about us, come and purchase. I find within my experience, 8-9 times out of 10, that purchase will happen just because you reminded somebody that they forgot to use their card. So yes, the analytics, for me, they're really important. Also to know where your power is at what time of day. Are people going to be paying attention to me early in the morning while they're still in bed, kind of scrolling through their phone before they deal with their day? Or are they going to speak to me in the afternoon or in the evening once their day is done? And you get all those that kind of data through the analytics. So in my experience, that's what I've seen.
Yeah. Thanks. I mean, that's where my head is as well, as that back end data. Oh, anyway. So there were two other questions. I just Makale, when did or Dimakatso, you can answer, when did the master plan first start? Somebody's asking, was it 2016 or 2017? But it was actually signed into agreement at the end of 2019. But how long, was there a lot of discussion beforehand? I think you said 2016 or 20. That was, I think, just give that a one-line answer to that question, because there's another very interesting question I want us to get to.
2016 it was, I think.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. And then the other question, and this kind of takes us back to the idea of kind of the environmental and sustainability of our industry. And somebody's wondering if South Africans are ready in terms of resources and price to demand naturally dyed fabrics and 100% organic clothing. I mean, anybody who's doing this knows that this is an expensive thing to do. I think that the market for that is really small, but I think it's a lot to do with consumer awareness and not necessarily having made that connection between what we wear and the environmental crisis we find ourselves in. And I think, yeah, I mean, that's what I'm trying to do. But I think my personal answer would be that I don't think we're ready, but we should be. And does anybody want to address that? Maybe you, Makale, you feel quite passionate about the environment, or Dimakatso, either of you, but Makale, maybe give it a jab.
Thanks, Jackie. Let me give it a jab. I do think, look, consumers, there is some kind of awareness that's happening right there, right? So people will I'm currently in Joburg. When I was in Cape Town, Cape Town is the big drinkers of coffee. And, people do care where their coffee beans are coming from. And I think, that similar kind of thinking needs to translate into, being aware about our clothing and what happens to the clothes that we wear. We just buying clothes too much. should we be stretching them to ensure that, you know, not like stretching the clothes, but wearing them for longer to ensure that we're not, you know, just checking them out for them to be landing up at the landfills, because there is a crisis, you know, in this country about, you know, the landfills. So it's a question, and, you know, it's the broader question is around also what can we do to recycle materials to ensure that, you know, we can kind of repurpose these materials to be able to make other things. So it's an important question to have. And sustainability, we are all confronted with it because, you know, I'm not a you know, what do they call these people? Just shouting around about global warming. But we have seen recently, also with the fire in Cape Town, environmental questions are, you know, are always staring at us. And these are hard questions to grapple with because, you know, sometimes you're working a fine rope of making sure that sustainability, you know, we're straddling many things, right? The ability to retain people's jobs, the ability to grow the economy, but also at what cost are we doing the thing? So that cost, and sometimes the cost is not so obvious, right? That's another thing. The cost is not so obvious, you know, and sometimes it's not an immediate cost. It's like a cost that happens down the line. So in my sense, you know, I do think there could be a lot that's done to sensitize consumers around being conscious around, you know, ethical production of where the clothes are being made and where do they come from and what materials are going in there. Yeah, I don't know if Dimakatso wants to say something, but just shout out Dimakatso. I'm really excited that you're here and I'm sorry that you came late. I've been spinning around like Dimakatso.
You make me look like I'm important. Okay, let me just excite you a little bit. We have an initiative called the National Cleaner Production Center. It's an initiative of the DTIC. Check it out. It is it's a wonderful initiative. We have started. I can tell you because I am the project manager of that. So I'm very excited about it. We have started. How we started? Okay, we are piloting all the goods that came in illegally. They used to be incinerated, so they used to go to the landfills. So we have started. We are doing circularity with those goods. That's the pilot process. That with the commitment or the task team around illegal stemming the flow of illegal imports. One of the projects that we're doing there is to do a circular economy. So we have started with that. We are working with that NCPC initiative of the DTI. We are also working with Department of Environment, Forestry and Fisheries, which they have made our circular economy priority in the National Waste Management Strategy Action Plan, which means that they are taking it to a higher level, whereby we will now start conscientizing the consumer regarding where they should take their clothes to, because I always often ask myself, where does the t-shirt go? And that National Waste Management Strategy says that we cannot take the things that we wear to the landfill. It has to go somewhere. So the project that we are doing, we are recycling and repurposing the clothing to make. You would be surprised that as South Africa we are importing wiping rags, which is rags to clean cars, when we can actually do that ourselves. So we have actually also motivated that we have illegal goods that are coming in. We're going to shred those clothes and make wiping rags out of them. We're also going to shred that and make insulation, inner soles, under carpeting. We're going to stuff mattresses. We're going to stuff furniture. There's a furniture master plan that is coming. We are actually working with them, telling them about the circularity. So it's exciting times for us. And Makale, you are actually right about that question. And of course, Jackie, what you said about dyeing of clothes using natural products. The students from TUT have done this. We have tested this with the CSIR. I can tell you that South Africa has got talent that we we need to harness, and we are harnessing it as the DTIC. So there's a whole lot. It's the subject that I'm passionate about as well. And if we had more time, I would share with you what we have done with police uniform, because they used to ban that somewhere in the country because somebody cannot wear that. SANDF uniform as well, SARS uniform. So we have started this amazing project that you're going to hear about. And if I may whet your appetite again, there is a master plan that is in the pipeline regarding circular economy. So it's possible. Government is working. Thank you so much.
Amazing. So I'm also very excited about talking about the natural dyeing. I heard that there's a big project happening it kind of crosses between food waste and the textile industry around onion skins, but on quite a big scale, which is very exciting. So I think we're going to have to close up. I'm so sorry that, I mean, we could go on, I know, forever. And Dimakatso, it was really great to have you join us towards the end. I'm sorry you weren't here from the beginning. Sorry about the questions. We're not going to get to all the issues, but we will do this again. But just thank you very much, all of you, for joining us. Annette, Anissa, Makale, Dimakatso, and Mikael, who had to leave early. I think there is so much potential for our industry. There's so much talent. I'm just always every day gobsmacked by what our creatives and our designers can do. And I think, Dimakatso, you just made me very aware that we mustn't forget that the textile clothing industry is much more than just fashion designers. We also have so much else going on that can create work, and that we have to be aware of when we talk about the circular economy in the textile and clothing industry. So just thank you very much from both the Fashion Revolution team and from Twyg. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. Please email me, Jackie@twyg.co.za. It's TWYG. And yeah, you can get hold of Fashion Revolution South Africa on Instagram. But thank you again, and everybody, let's get to work. There's lots to do and such wonderful things to see. And Annette, thanks for being such a fantastic marketer to the rest of the world about what's happening here. Great. Thank you, everybody. I really appreciate it.
Thanks, Jackie. Thanks. If anyone has any question to ask, please do not be afraid to email me. And all the questions that have been asked as well, if you can email me so that I can see which ones to answer. And I'll be glad to do that. And thank you for inviting me. Thank you so much.
Pleasure. Thank you. And we will film this. This will be filmed and it will go onto our various platforms. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye. Thanks, Anissa.
Just saving the chat, Jackie, before I log off so that questions can be saved.
I was just going to ask you for that. Thanks.
Yeah, I'm just saving it. So I think it will just save to the Zoom account, and then we can share it with you.
Great. Thank you so much for, there's some people still here.
Oh,
Maybe they just left it on.
just Cyril. Yeah. Okay.
You look amazing.
Mm-hmm.
Amazing. Thank you.
I think Nikki, so who's DB?
I'm just removing now. Oh, okay. No, I don't want to.
So it's just
sorry, it's just us now.
No, I think for us, Cyril, that stuff, there was a lot of interesting stuff for us. I don't know how interesting it was for anybody